TNBS presents the podcast, episode 3. I'm your host, Tommy, aka Millsy. We got a special episode for you today. I'm going to touch on this the past weekend for NFL, do the NFL 60-second timeout, a 60-second run-through of the games, just a brief little recap. I'm going to talk a bit about Brandon Cooks and his career. I'm going to pick the Thursday night game for you. And most importantly, we're going to talk Triple G Canelo. And today I'm joined by Nick.
Hey, what's going on, Tommy?
How you doing, Nick? How you doing today?
Good, good. You have to excuse me a little bit. I'm driving right now, but I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, we're happy to have you on. Glad you could take some time out.
Yeah, and remember, anybody can follow me over on Twitter at Nicky B. Perez. That's Nicky B. Perez over on Twitter.
And you can find that in the video too. Just check the text. You can find my Twitter name there at Millsy021, and you can see Nick's up there at Nicky B. Perez. Well, let's jump right into it. And Nick, I want to get your opinion. What'd you think of the first fight? Was that the right outcome?
Yeah, I think the first fight, I honestly wasn't too disappointed with the draw. I remember by the end of the fight, I thought to myself that it was probably a draw because I didn't think Triple G really woke up till midway through the fight. Maybe about the fourth round or so. I believe, if I remember correctly, I gave Canelo the first 3 rounds. And Triple G, I gave him up the middle rounds. And then I think, if I remember correctly, the last few rounds I thought were kind of almost toss-ups. I don't remember 100%, but no, I wasn't too disappointed with the draw. And, and business-wise, I had a feeling once those kind of fights are close and you can get more out of the second fight, as shaky as it may seem, sometimes the draw is what was going to happen. But I understand why people thought Triple G won, though. I guess I did see him leaning a little bit more towards Triple G, but It is what it is.
Well, as you know, you and I have talked. I thought Triple G won. I'm not mad. I wasn't mad at a draw. I think that was a fair outcome. But it kind of seems like after the draw of the first fight, there was a lot of anticipation leading up to that first fight. But it seems like people are more anticipating the second the rematch. They're looking forward more to the rematch than they are the first fight. Do you think that that's just because of how the draw, or do you think it's because of the caliber of the fighters?
I think it's a little bit of both, actually. I mean, the caliber of the fighters, they're still the same guys, but there's something to it that, to the fact that they had that first fight, and so they're kind of comfortable with each other now.
Mm-hmm.
Going into that first fight, each guy, they don't know what they're getting into, really. So I think going to the second fight has the potential to be even better, being that they're comfortable with each other, and the draw. I think Triple G felt cheated. I think Canelo feels that he won, but I do think this fight is going to be much better because they're comfortable with each other, so they know what each other has, and it's going to be explosive. 13th round, like they call it.
Well, I tend to agree with you. I mean, in the first fight, we saw Triple G kind of feel Canelo out for the first couple rounds. If I'm not mistaken, Canelo outlanded Triple G in the first round, and then I know in the 12th round they landed the same amount. I mean, for the most part, if you look at the punch numbers, Triple G threw almost 200 more punches, while only landing, I believe it was it was 218 to 169 in terms of punches landed in favor of Triple G. Obviously, Canelo landed at a higher percentage. And Triple G, landed more and threw more with the jab. Now, I want to talk a bit about the weaknesses of the fighters in those fights. For me personally, my biggest issue with Triple G was not going to the body. He landed 8 body shots for the duration of the fight. That's, as you know, that can't happen. You can't only land 8 body punches and expect to win a fight. Now, do you expect to see Triple G go a little more to the body in this fight, or do you think he kind of stays with the same approach as the first?
Yeah, Yeah, I think Triple J is a great point. I think Triple J is going to go a little more to the body to break to try and break Canelo down. Canelo his defense, nobody talked about it that much, but his defense was pretty good. He was slipping, making him miss a lot. A lot of people were saying he was running at the end, which I guess, he kind of was. He was staying away from him. But before that, he was making Triple G miss a lot, whether he was on the ropes with like a Mayweather-style shoulder roll on the ropes or just in the center of the ring. He was making Triple G miss a lot. But I do think Triple G is going to mix up his attack a little more in this fight coming up.
I think he has to. He has to if he wants to have a chance to win this one.
Yeah.
And another issue with Triple G was his lack of head movement. Now, in a lot of fights where we've seen Triple G, he's never been big on head movement. I mean, the fight, even the fights he's dominated, like the fight against Kell Brook, he had almost no head movement. Now, would you say that that's just who he is as a fighter? Do you think it's his style? Do you think he just isn't athletic enough or doesn't read punches well enough to move his head? What's your take on that?
I think it's who he is as a fighter. I think he's throughout his career he's been getting hit like that. Sometimes he says he lets them hit him to kind of add that drama to the show that he likes. But I think it's just him as a fighter. I think he's one of those guys that it wakes him up in a way to get caught with those punches. But with that said, in the last May 5th when he fought Vanes Martirosyan, it was a stand-in for Canelo. I thought Martirosyan, who was coming up from 154 and fighting in an unnatural weight class, even though he got blitzed and lost, I think in the second round, knocked out in the second round, third round. If you watch that fight, he caught Triple G with some punches that looked like they could have stunned him a bit. I think Triple G, he could have obviously underestimated it. He wasn't thinking anything special, but I thought that was a bit telling too. Sometimes these guys, sometimes the chin starts wearing out after a while. I mean, you can't always take these kind of shots. And I think Triple G, I don't think he'd be able to do that again in this fight. I don't think he's going to be able to take those kind of shots in this fight. I think Canelo's really going to come at him. So.
Well, that's actually that segues in perfectly to the next thing I was going to bring up and wanted to get your take and your opinion on it. After watching the first fight again, I've seen it probably 5 or 6 times now. I rewatched it again last night, and I thought Canelo thoroughly outboxed Triple G. I didn't think there was any comparison between the two in terms of boxing skill in that first fight. But what I wanted to ask you was, do you think that Canelo should try to fight Triple G a little more? Still box, but should he try to throw a couple more punches around, or should he focus more on quote-unquote fighting Triple G as opposed to boxing him? But I will preface that by saying, can Canelo hurt Triple G?
I don't know if Canelo can hurt Triple G, but I think he should fight him more. I think he should test his age. Canelo's 28 years old, young still, and I think Triple G is 36, 37, something like that. I think he should test his age. I think he should fight him more and make him work a lot more and really test that age and test those legs and see what he's got left. In my opinion, I honestly think we've seen the best of Triple G. I think he might have peaked in the Canelo fight. So I think Canelo should fight more. That's why I think the second fight too is always interesting, because Canelo almost knows what Triple G has at this point. Mm-hmm. And so I think Canelo will be more likely to fight a little bit more and to stand and try and I think trying to finish Triple G off. He should test his age. He should test his age and see how much he has left in the tank. Triple G.
I agree. I mean, especially in a fight, as you know, you need to try to exploit any chink in the armor that you can. Any weakness, you need to attack that weakness, especially in boxing. I mean, we see it in all sports. We see it in football, for example. If a team's got a shitty run defense, the team they're playing is most likely to try and run the ball on him. So if, for example, or to tie it all in, if you're Canelo and Triple G's not moving his head, why not go in, throw a combo, and get out instead of waiting for him to come to you and counterpunching off of what he throws? Why not be the aggressor to try and dictate the fight? Because as you know, that's something judges look at. That's something that stands out to him. And I thought Triple G absolutely dominated the pace of the first fight. That was his kind of fight. That's what he wanted. At that pace where he's coming forward, he's the aggressor, he's throwing more punches, he's landing more punches. It just that fits into Triple G. But with Canelo, he in the first fight, he went to the ropes all too easy. That was my biggest issue with Canelo, is he would go to the ropes and fight Triple G off the ropes, which, you know, he wants to try to use his skill as a counterpuncher, but you can't go to the ropes so willingly, because then to the judges, when Triple G throws a combination and 2 of the 5 punches land, it looks like he's doing a lot more damage, even though Canelo counterpunched and landed 2 of his own. It looks like Triple G's doing more because he has Canelo up against the ropes. So
I agree with that. Yep.
That was my biggest issue with Canelo in the first fight, was he was all too going to the ropes all too willingly. So I, in your opinion, what is it that the main thing that Canelo needs to do to win this fight?
To win this fight, I think Canelo needs to come forward more. I just think he needs to test Triple G's age, and I mean, he boxed decent, but he also looked like he got discouraged by Triple G. Like you said, Triple G, after about the 4th round, it looked like Triple G, it really started controlling the fight, walking him down, taking him to the ropes and everything. So I think Canelo needs to stay on that jab, stay on those combinations like he was doing. Go to that body, test that body, to break down those older legs in the beginning. He should start going to the body from the beginning. Even though Triple G wears his cup very high, if you notice that, he wears his cup pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of sometimes hard to go to the body there, but you're gonna have to. I think you should go to the body early, test those legs, and just test that age and see if he could go a full 12 rounds. I think if he beats the body early, lands those combinations, gets in and out. I mean, that sounds like the perfect boxing. Anybody would wish they could do that, but you're gonna have to beat somebody like Triple G, who's still undefeated, mind you. All he has is that one draw. Nobody's beaten him yet.
I couldn't agree with you more, because we saw Canelo's strategy in the first fight, which was to counterpunch, to let Triple G be the aggressor, so to speak, but not get hit. I feel like Canelo's focus on that fight was quality of punches over quantity of punches, whereas Triple G's was throw quantity over quality. And I think Triple G can get away with that. I'm not sure if Canelo can, because we know Triple G's power is no joke. It's no secret. I'm not saying Canelo doesn't have power, but you brought up a good point about Canelo seeming discouraged at times, because there were a few times where Canelo absolutely rocked Triple G, which probably would have knocked out most people, but Triple G ate it and kept coming forward. So to me, I feel like that kind of discouraged Canelo a bit. That's why I say I think he needs to fight him more as opposed to box him. And going back to, like you mentioned, with wearing him down, if Canelo had worn Triple G down a bit more in that fight, maybe he does get the decision. Maybe Triple G does wear down towards the end, because it kind of looked like Canelo was wearing down in the later rounds as opposed to Triple G wearing down in the later rounds.
And that's been Canelo's. And on the other hand, this is one of those great 50-50 fights, kind of almost like the Danny Garcia Porter fight we had last week, where one of Canelo's faults has been for a while that he runs out of gas. He's not able to sustain that full 12 rounds of action, which he's going to have to. But he's looking a lot leaner. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that bulk that he had out of nowhere. Nobody knows where it came from.
That Mexican meat.
Yeah, those tacos over there. He was eating, and all of a sudden he was the Hulk, and nobody, he's just a lot leaner now, which means I think he's gonna be able to move a lot, throw a lot more punches, and be a little quicker on his feet to get in and out and stuff like that. I think this one really comes down to youth versus age. Youth versus an older great fighter against a younger great fighter. So it's going to be great. It's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be an interesting. I think it's going to be so much better than the first.
I do too. I agree with you there. I think because we're not going to have that feeling out process. We're not going to have those slow first couple of rounds. I think
this one picks up. I agree. This one picks up by the 2 minutes into the fight. The first couple of minutes are going to be all right. To see what we got, what's going on now, and by second, third minute or whatever, second round, they should be going. Somebody's going to try to finish it. Especially if they know they can't go to the judges. Triple G knows that.
Well, that was my biggest thing. Is I think they're going to try to go for a decisive win and not leave it up to the judges, especially Triple G after what happened in the first fight. We saw the scorecard from Adelaide Bird, which was just, I mean, come on now. Even if you thought Canelo won the fight, in no way did he win that fight. Well, she had the scorecard 10 rounds to 2.
Yeah, that was that golden boy influence.
It's just like Jim Lampley said after the fight. No, that didn't happen.
No, that was false. There was no way. Even if you, like you said, even if you had Canelo, like I thought it was a close fight. I thought it could have gone either way.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you had Canelo, it would have only been by a round or so. You know what I mean? It would have been
exactly.
Like a seven or whatever. There was no way it was what she had. That was crazy. And that's not right. I mean, obviously that's been an issue in boxing for a while now, especially in Texas. But let's get a little off topic. I want to get your prediction for this fight, and then I'll wrap it up with mine. We know you're busy and have to get back to training, so we thank you for taking the time out. Yeah, no problem. My prediction for the fight is, and I'm going this one. My prediction is honestly that Canelo. I think if he does what we said, he fights and he keeps up a fast pace, uses that youth to his advantage, and if he's able to take Triple G's shots. We saw in the first one he was able to take some of his best punches, but if he's able to take them again, minus the Mexican meat, then I honestly think Canelo has a chance to stop him. So my prediction is Canelo by stoppage in the later rounds, in the 11th or 12th round. I'm going to take Canelo by stoppage.
So you're going to take a Canelo stoppage in the championship rounds?
In the championship rounds, yes. TKO. Technical knock. I don't think he knocks him out cold, but I do think he beats him to the point where the referee might have to stop it.
Okay. I could see that happening, and like we had said, if Canelo turns not to the aggressor, but turns to fighting Triple G a little bit more as opposed to trying to box him for 12 rounds every second of every round, and if he stays off the ropes. I'm gonna have to go. I still think Triple G's power is too much for Canelo. I mean, we saw Triple G take Canelo's best shot and it not affect Triple G. We saw Triple G land some pretty big shots on Canelo, and not that they stunned Canelo or truly hurt Canelo, but Canelo would punch Triple G would keep coming forward. Triple G would punch Canelo, and Canelo would take, obviously talking clean, heavy punches landed, but Canelo would take those punches and then he would back up, or he would, what you're supposed to do, get away, get out. But I just think with that and seeing that, and I personally felt that discouraged Canelo at points in the first fight. I think we could see that again. I don't think either one of them knock each other out. I don't see a stoppage here. I have Triple G on a decision. I've kind of toyed back and forth with split decision or a unanimous decision, but I'm going to have to take Triple G on a split decision. I know I just wrote in a piece and put unanimous decision, but like I said, I've been flipping back and forth between the two. But I think Triple G pulls it out based on a decision. But I tell you what, I'm definitely looking forward to this fight.
Yeah, no matter what happens, no matter what, if it's a decision, knockout, this is going to be a barn burner of a fight. The hype is real. That's the one thing we can be sure of. The hype is real. If you know, we usually see these guys promote these fights, and you could tell most of the time that it's a lot of the talking but not for promotion reasons only. But this one really seems like they both have a lot of pride. They both don't like what happened with the last fight. Canelo does not like that his name's been dragged in the mud because of the meat issue, whatever. Triple G doesn't like that he has that draw on his record. He thought he should have won. He doesn't like that Canelo might have cheated. There's so much, even with the corners, Abel Sanchez and Triple G's trainer and Canelo's trainer. I forget whatever his name is. I forget his name. Chapo or whatever his name is.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either. I
forget what it is. But the hype is real, and the fight really seems like this is going to be a classic. It's going to be starting off where the last one left off. So I think that makes for an exciting fight between two of the best in the world, the best middleweights in the world.
Well, not the two best middleweights in the world. You and I aren't stepping in the ring, so not quite the two best in the world. But we'll say number 3 and 4.
Yeah, the 3 and 4 best middleweights in the world.
But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this fight. I can't wait personally. I know you can't wait. We've discussed it at length, for the past year since the last fight. But thank you very much for taking the time out. We know you're busy, and especially with training now, and looking forward to the updates on when the fight's coming and whatnot. So thank you again for taking the time out. We really do appreciate it. And where can we find you?
Yeah, no problem. I love doing it. Anytime I get to talk boxing, it's a good time for me. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Nicky B. Prez. I'm on Instagram at Baez Boxing, and yeah, I'll keep everybody updated, keep you updated on what's going on, and also I have you can check out the podcast TNBS presents Center Ring with Nick Baez, where I go a little more in depth into different things in boxing, involving boxing. I'm going to try to do big things with that, and yeah, then as far as the training going, I got the contract signed, got myself a manager now and everything, so. Everything's going well on this end, and just looking forward to a great fight this Saturday. Yeah,
well, as soon as you get a fight booked, you can follow at TNBS021 or at Nicky B4Prez, and you can follow either one of them, both of them. You can get boxing updates, you can get Nick's career updates, NFL updates, fantasy sports updates, podcasts, the whole nine. So. Head over to the www.thenosebleedsect.com, and we'll say goodbye to Nick. We'll let you get back. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, thanks.
The NFL 60-second Sunday timeout. Matt Ryan cost Falcons versus Philly. 88 Bucks and Saints upset for Fitzmagic. Ravens embarrass the Bills. Poor Peterman. Giants find yet another way to lose in crippling fashion. Belichick and Brady bully Bill O'Brien. Porn star girlfriend's not enough for Jimmy G to lead San Fran over Minnesota. Titans and Dolphins game I think just ended, and newsflash, Blaine Gabbert still sucks. Jack Doyle fumbled the game away to the Bengals. The Browns didn't lose. They didn't win either. And James Conner said what up to Le'Veon Bell from the end zone twice. Tyreek Hill is fucking fast. The Chiefs' offense is the real deal. Emmanuel Sanders is back. Case Keenum leads Denver over Seattle. Surprise! The Cowboys' offense can't pass. Carolina held off Dallas and only scored 16. The Cardinals played? That was the NFL team, the Arizona Cardinals? That Alex Smith and AP turned back the clock on? Bears' defense was legit. That was until Aaron Rodgers said, "Here, hold my beer." Sam Darnold started his career off with a pick six. Then the Jets came back to score 48. The Rams are the real deal, and the Raiders, well, the Raiders are still the Raiders. One person I wanted to talk about was Brandon Cooks. Now, I personally was very high on Cooks coming into this year for fantasy. I had him ranked as my 11th best fantasy wide receiver. That was based on PPR rankings, a half point. And I was really a bit surprised to see how many times he was targeted last night. Not because of his ability, but because of, a new fit. Then I looked a little deeper into it, and it kind of made more sense to me because he has played for two of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen play. And Tom Brady, who's arguably the best of all time, and Drew Brees, who's one of the best of all time as well. So to play under both of them, and then it's not just the quarterbacks he's played under. It's he's played under Sean Payton, who's regarded as a very good offensive mind, and then Bill Belichick. Obviously, Bill Belichick, speaks for himself. Now, he never took that leap to elite number one wide receiver, but he's had 3 straight 1,000-yard receiving years out of 4. He's been in the league for 4 years now. So the only year he hasn't topped 1,000 yards has been his rookie season. I love the fit with the Rams. I like Robert Woods a lot as well. I like Cooper Kupp a lot. I think they have the perfect set of wide receivers for what they're trying to do. Kupp in the slot is pretty sure-handed. We saw him catch a touchdown pass last night. Robert Woods as well, very sure-handed. But see, Robert Woods doesn't get enough credit for his athleticism. Now, I don't mean speed, but I mean you'll see Robert Woods make tough catches look easy at times. I'm a fan of Robert Woods, but when it comes to Brandon Cooks to me is a level above both of them. Now, he's been labeled as a speedster a lot in his career, and I think that's been a bit unfair. He's a very good route runner, and he's not just for example, in comparison to Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is a 1-2-3 trick pony, whereas Brandon Cooks can, he can go out there and play the Deshaun Jackson role and go deep pretty much all game. Catch maybe 2 passes for 60 yards. He can do that, but he's being underutilized in that role. He's a much better route runner. He plays bigger than the 5'10" that he is, or 5'11". He is very fast, obviously, but last night in particular, like I said, for Jared Goff to show that much confidence in someone who he's never played a full NFL regular season game with, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they barely even played in the preseason. So to go and then not only to get 8 targets, essentially 10 because of the 2 pass interference penalties, but to still go out and catch 5 passes for 87 yards and 2 big third down catches, get 10 targets. That's not only does that show that Goff has confidence in him already to look his way, but that Sean McVay, who's regarded as quite possibly the best young offensive mind in all of football, that he has the confidence to call plays for Cooks being the number one option. Now, they have the pieces behind him where if it doesn't work out, it's not going to hurt them. But I think they saw a little bit more in Cooks than I think a lot of teams do and have. He's experienced now being in the league for 4 years, and like I mentioned, the quarterbacks and the coaches he's been under and played under. Then to have 3 straight 1,000-yard 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Last night, I believe it was 2 40-plus yard pass plays that he drew pass interferences on. He just does so much and doesn't get enough credit for what he does. And personally, I think he's going to have a huge season. I still think that, even though he wasn't the one to catch the touchdown last night. But I think most games, if they take a deep shot with him, 1 out of 3, he's going to catch. He's going to come down with. So, if you can get a 40-yard gain 1 out of 3 times throwing him a deep ball, I think any offense would take that. All the while, he still has the ability to run, precise routes and get open and run a sideline route when you need him to and get to the sticks and make the catch when you need him to. So I just felt that I just wanted to talk about him a little bit, especially because I was surprised to see his price on DraftKings from a DFS perspective at 5,600. if you played the Sunday and Monday night slate, Sunday night primetime slate. 5,600 was way too low. I mean, you have Robert Woods at 6,200, which I think that's a fair price for him as the season goes on. But to have Woods listed as the number one receiver over Cooks, that was a little surprising to me. Because if Woods was the number one receiver, why did they go out and get someone of Cooks' caliber? They could have saved some cap space and signed somebody cheaper, or just promoted Cooper Kupp and went with, say, Farrell Cooper in the slot, or signed like someone like Danny Amendola. So, to me, that to me shows that the Rams are higher on Cooks and view Cooks as a number one, and view his production as a number one receiver, which in many years it has been. I mean, the Jets haven't had 3 straight 1,000-yard receivers. The Bills haven't had 3 straight 1,000-yard receivers. The Baltimore Ravens, and Cleveland Browns, so I could keep going on the list, going down the list. So I just felt that he was being a little undervalued this season, and I think he's coming into one of his best, one of the best potential spots to have his best season yet in his career. Considering that it is a high octane offense, they are well balanced, but it's a very explosive offense. There's other weapons around him where he, if defenses can key on him if they want to, but if they do, then they can get, they're going to get beat by Robert Woods and/or Cooper Kupp and Todd Gurley. So I think it's the perfect situation for him to be in. I really expect him to play at a high level and really reward fantasy owners this year. I will be curious to see where his DraftKings price is from week to week. That's something I'll be keeping an eye on, just as a curiosity, from a curiosity perspective, because to me, it looked like he was the clear number one receiver last night. He was the number one option in Jared Goff's eyes. I understand that Robert Woods finished with 10 targets and Cooks finished with 8, but the 2 pass interference penalties that he drew don't count as targets. So he technically had 10 targets as well and had 5 for 87, I believe, a better stat line than Robert Woods did. And he also had made a bigger impact. 2 of those catches were for first downs on third downs. So I'll be curious to see him and how he finishes the rest of the season and follow his DraftKings price. But I just want to talk a little bit about him because I feel like he's one of the more underrated and undervalued players in the NFL. But be curious to see what he does this week too. But the last thing I'm going to talk about before we end the episode, the Thursday night game coming up, the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Baltimore Ravens are given 1.5, and the over/under is 44. Excuse me. The Ravens are coming off an absolute dismantling of Buffalo at home in Baltimore, and the Bengals are coming off an 11-point win over the Indianapolis Colts in Indy with Andrew Luck back. So both of these teams had an impressive week 1, especially the Ravens. Granted, it was against the Buffalo Bills. This is a divisional game on a short week. Both these teams are pretty even to me. I don't like that the Ravens are giving 1.5. I think this should be a tiny bit more of a pick 'em. I could honestly see it being a 1-point game, so that half a point being the difference. It's tough because these teams are pretty evenly matched, and I hate Thursday night games on short weeks, just because the quality of play is so low. You don't know really what to expect from the two of them. One thing I'm pretty confident in is taking the under. I don't like a total of 44. I know that kind of the short week thing is going to matter a little more as the season goes on as opposed to now, but both of these teams coming off high scoring games and pretty big wins that I don't the fact that it's a divisional game to me says it's going to stay, it is enough for me to say it's going to stay close. So I'm going to take the Bengals getting the 1.5, and I'm going to take the under 44. In terms of straight up, I'm going to take the Bengals straight up as well. I'm pretty sure the Bengals are 8-1-1 in their last 10 games as home underdogs against the spread. So I'm going to stick with the Bengals to continue that trend, getting points at home against the Ravens in a tough matchup. I actually kind of like the Bengals offense quite a bit. AJ Green finally has some help on the outside with Tyler Boyd and John Ross. Tyler Eifert played more and slightly better than I had expected. If he can stay healthy, I could see them increasing his snaps a bit and becoming more of a factor in the red zone. So the Bengals offense, I mean, they're pretty deadly in the passing game, and then you throw in the backfield, you still have Gio Bernard, who is a weapon in the back out of the backfield in the passing game. Joe Mixon is a more than capable pass catcher who looked absolutely great in week 1 against Indy. Yes, that was against Indy, but I think he's that talented. He just had it was the off the field red flags with him. But I really do like the Bengals offense. It's the defense that worries me a bit. I do like the secondary. I think they have solid corners. But again, no Vontez Burfict this game, so that worries me a bit, especially against the Ravens. Joe Flacco doesn't scare me, but the Ravens defense worries me a tiny bit. And their run game, they could control the clock and methodically move down the field. Throw a couple short passes here and there. Or, we saw Crabtree last week show he's still got it as well. So I do expect this game to stay close, but I do like the Bengals. I think they have a tiny bit more on offense and a little bit of a better secondary. And I think Andy Dalton is better than Joe Flacco, hands down. So I'm going to take the Bengals straight up, the Bengals with the spread. Give me the 1.5, and I'll take the under 44. I could very easily see it going over. I could see it being, not going over, but being at 44. I could see this game finishing at 24-20, but I'm expecting more of a 2017, 21-20 maybe. So yeah, that's Bengals straight up, Bengals with the spread, and I'm going to take the under. Thanks for joining me, and thank you again to Nick for coming on, taking some time out to get on and talk about Triple G Canelo. You can find him on Twitter at NickyB4Prez. You can find me on Twitter at Millsy021, and you can find you can follow the Nosebleed section Twitter at TNBS021. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next week for episode 4. Peace.